The alien observation deck smelled faintly of disinfectant and overcooked algae paste, a combination that made Riley Kane's stomach growl in protest. She leaned against the railing, hands buried in the pockets of her faded bomber jacket, surveying the sprawling lab floor below. White armored technicians scurried like over-caffeinated ants, their long limbs bending in ways that would have dislocated a human shoulder. Every so often one of them would glance up at her, then quickly look away, as though afraid prolonged eye contact might result in sudden injury. The truth was, Riley didn't look dangerous. Not really. She was a compact 5'8" with dark hair pulled into a messy bun and the posture of someone who'd spent too many hours crammed into drop ships. But there was something in her eyes, a glint that suggested she was already calculating which route out of the room had the fewest security checkpoints. Above her, the transparent dome framed the curve of Earth, blue and white against the black. The alien ship, something the Galactic Registry called an evaluation and integration platform, was officially here to assess whether humanity was combat-suitable for interstellar coalition duties. Unofficially, Riley figured they were here to satisfy some cosmic curiosity about how a species that spent most of the late 20th century obsessed with hairspray and power ballads had survived this long. "You are calm," said a voice beside her, hesitant and accented in a way only someone with 3 vocal cords could manage. Strip, her assigned handler, had the look of a perpetually nervous intern, tall, willowy, skin the pale shimmer of a pearl, and pupils dilated enough to swallow the entire iris. He clutched a datapad like it might save him from imminent death. Riley glanced at him. "We're just doing reaction tests, right? No live fire, no exploding moons, no, oops, wrong dimension incidents." His pupils somehow managed to widen further. "No moons will explode. Probably. The procedure is perfectly safe." "Safe for me, or for your insurance premiums?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. Riley smirked, letting the silence hang. The truth was, she liked Strip. He was earnest, and unlike the other aliens who regarded her with a mixture of fascination and wariness, he seemed to genuinely want her to succeed. Even if he thought success meant she'd perform slightly above galactic average and maybe not trip over her own feet. Down on the lab floor, a cluster of technicians finished assembling what looked like a holographic arena, high walls flickering into existence, terrain shimmering in midair, and, oh, was that a simulated volcano? Riley almost laughed. This was their idea of a challenge? A door slid open and Dr. Vac entered, flanked by 2 armored guards. The chief evaluator's exoskeleton gleamed with ceremonial inlays, his segmented mouth clicking as he barked orders. He was built like a praying mantis and had the personality to match, cold precision with a dash of predatory patience. Subject Kane he called voice amplified so it reverberated through the observation deck. "Today we measure your combat response time. We will compare your performance to that of our elite troopers." Riley raised an eyebrow. "Sounds fun. What's the high score?" His mandibles twitched, though she couldn't tell if it was irritation or confusion. "The median response time among the Coalition's finest is 0.24 standard seconds." She whistled. "Not bad. You guys ever try espresso?" Dr. Vac ignored her. He gestured toward the arena. "When I signal, the program will initiate. All you must do is survive. The system will track your reaction speed from the moment hostiles appear." Strip leaned toward her and whispered, "He is very proud of this system." "Do not. What is your word, sandbag?" Riley grinned. "Wouldn't dream of it." Technicians scurried into position. Camera drones hummed to life, circling the arena like metallic wasps. A massive countdown timer flickered above the main console. Dr. Vac raised one clawed hand toward the start switch, every movement precise and ceremonial, as though this were some ancient rite rather than a glorified video game. The air in the observation deck grew still. Strip shifted from foot to foot, datapad clutched tighter. Somewhere below, the arena hummed with charging power. And then Dr. Vac's claw came down. The cameras whirred. The countdown began. The system chirped its readiness. Only Riley wasn't in the arena anymore. The console operators froze. One of the guards looked over his shoulder. Dr. Vac turned sharply, just in time to see Riley standing behind him, holding a half-empty bottle of neon orange sports drink she'd liberated from the crew lounge. "Sorry," she said, casual as a Sunday morning. "Was I supposed to wait for you to finish your speech?" The silence stretched, broken only by the faint slurp as she took another sip. Strip's jaw dropped, his pupils contracting into tiny pinpoints. Dr. Vac's mandibles clicked twice before he found words. You moved before the signal. You said, from the moment hostiles appear. Didn't say, I couldn't get the drop on you first. One of the console operators started muttering in rapid, high-pitched syllables. Another was frantically replaying security footage, as if the cameras might reveal some hidden trick, teleportation, cloaking, divine intervention. But the video showed exactly what had happened. The moment Djarvak's hand twitched toward the switch, Riley was already in motion, slipping through the side exit, vaulting a safety railing, and navigating the ship's maintenance crawlways to arrive here. All in less than 3 seconds. That is not possible, Djarvak said, though his voice lacked its earlier certainty. Not possible for you, Riley corrected. You got all these fancy metrics and speed charts, but combat isn't about how fast you can react. It's about making sure the other guy never gets to act at all. Strip made a small noise, somewhere between awe and horror. Djarvak's mandibles twitched again, but this time it looked more like irritation. We will conduct a new test. One that cannot be circumvented. Oh good, Riley said, tossing the empty bottle into a recycler chute. I was afraid this was going to be a short day. The technicians were already scrambling, muttering in hushed tones, recalibrating the arena parameters. Riley could hear phrases like live simulation, adaptive AI, and full contact scenario. Her grin widened. This was about to get interesting. Djarvak pointed at her, the gesture sharp as a blade. You will face a real challenge. Our most advanced combat drones, fully armed. Riley shrugged, as if he'd just suggested a light jog. Cool. Do I get music this time? The chief evaluator didn't answer, but Strip leaned in again. Why are you smiling? You do not even know the parameters. That's the thing, she said, already heading toward the prep bay. Doesn't matter. Low stakes are boring. She didn't see Strip's expression, but she heard him mutter something that sounded suspiciously like a prayer. By the time Riley stepped into the lift, the arena had vanished from the lab floor, replaced by a sealed combat chamber. Djarvak's voice echoed through the intercom, all ceremony and cold precision again. Begin recording, he ordered. And for the first time, Riley's pulse quickened, not from nerves, but from anticipation. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be another test. It would be fun. The dropship smelled faintly of ozone and lubricant, the kind of industrial tang that clung to the back of the throat. Riley sat on a bench along the wall, legs stretched out, helmet resting on her lap. The alien crew had strapped themselves in like nervous airline passengers, their elongated fingers twitching against harness clasps. She was the only one not secured, idly bouncing her helmet on her knee, like a basketball. Strip stood near the cockpit door, glancing back at her every few seconds as though checking to confirm she hadn't vanished again. His pearl-toned skin seemed paler than usual, and the datapad in his hands trembled slightly. You understand, he began, choosing his words with surgical care. This is not a simulation. The drones are physical constructs fully armed and programmed to respond with lethal force. Riley popped her gum and nodded. Sounds like Thursday. He hesitated, clearly debating whether that was bravado or a sincere assessment. The Coalition considers these units among the most dangerous non-biological combatants in the galaxy. They adapt. They coordinate. They die like everything else when you put a hole in the right spot, Riley finished for him, sliding the helmet over her head and locking it into place. Relax. I'll be fine. The dropship jolted as the pilot banked toward their destination. Through the narrow viewport, Riley could see the metallic expanse of the testing range below, a sprawling maze of alloy walls, shifting platforms, and distant shapes moving in the shadows. Artificial lighting cast harsh white beams across the ground, throwing long, jagged silhouettes. Djarvak's voice crackled through the ship's comm. Subject Kane, you will deploy in 30 seconds. Your objective, survive until mission completion parameters are met. Reaction time, adaptability, and combat efficiency will be recorded and analyzed. She keyed her mic. Copy that document. And if I take one as a pet, does that count as efficiency or adaptability? There was a pause. This is not a matter for humor. Then you're really not going to like the next 30 minutes. The dropship shuddered as the landing struts extended, a dull clang echoing through the hull. The rear hatch yawned open and cool artificial air poured in, tinged with the metallic tang of ozone. Riley stepped forward without hesitation, boots hitting the ramp as if she were walking into a familiar bar. The range was eerily quiet at first, save for the low hum of energy fields powering the shifting walls. She took 3 steps before the first drone dropped from above, a spidery silhouette with jointed legs and swiveling cannon mount. 2 more appeared from the right, their optical sensors locking onto her with a synchronized whir. She moved before they fired, sideways leap, one hand grabbing the nearest wall to spin her body through a narrow gap. A plasma bolt hissed past where her head had been half a second earlier. She landed in a crouch, already pulling a short blade from her thigh sheath. The blade buried itself in the first drone's sensor cluster before its targeting system could recalibrate. Sparks erupted, and the machine collapsed in a jittering heap. Riley wrenched the blade free, pivoting on one foot to catch the second drone mid-stride. She vaulted onto its back, pried open a panel, and ripped free a coil of glowing circuitry. It dropped instantly. In the control room, Drvac's mandibles clicked in rapid disbelief. She is improvising with close-quarters engagement against ranged units. This is inefficient. Strip watched silently, eyes fixed on the screens. No, this is human. On the range, the third drone advanced, but Riley had already seized one of its fallen comrades. She hurled the ruined machine like a battering ram, knocking the active unit off balance. In the same motion, she was airborne again, landing atop it with a feral grin visible even through her visor. The fight ended in seconds. A low hiss sounded from above. The walls shifted, revealing a broader section of the range, and with it, a dozen more drones moving in unison. Their targeting beams lanced through the haze, crisscrossing the ground like a web of red light. Riley's mic clicked on. "Okay, Doc, I'm guessing this is the real challenge part?" "Correct," Drvac replied, his tone as rigid as ever. She cracked her knuckles. "Good. Would have been embarrassed if you stopped at 3. The swarm surged forward, but Riley didn't retreat. She sprinted straight into them, vaulting over 2, grabbing a third by its leg, and swinging it like a club. The impact shattered another drone's limb assembly. Sparks rained down, catching in her hair. Halfway through the melee, one drone lunged, pinning her arm. She twisted, using its momentum to throw both of them into a support column. The column cracked, sending a section of the overhead walkway crashing down, right onto 3 advancing units. In the observation deck, one of the alien techs turned to Drvac. "Our adaptive programming is failing to predict her actions. She does not follow any tactical model in our database." "She is unpredictable," Drvac admitted reluctantly. Strip's voice was quiet. "She is human." A sudden tremor shook the range. Through the shifting walls, Riley spotted movement that wasn't mechanical. A massive bipedal shape stepped into view, armored plates gleaming under the artificial lights. Its silhouette was too broad, too fluid to be one of the drones. She recognized it instantly from the briefing material she'd ignored, a Vark war construct. Her comm crackled with voices, panicked this time. "That unit is not part of the exercise. Repeat, the Vark have breached the testing perimeter." "Cool," Riley said, drawing her sidearm. "Guess we're skipping dessert." The construct roared, a sound like tearing metal, and charged. Plasma fire from the drones tore into the walls around her as the massive alien war machine closed the distance. She sidestepped, firing a controlled burst into its knee joint. It staggered but didn't fall. She closed in, ignoring the drones now flanking her. A leap, a grab on the war machine's armor ridge, and she was climbing, boots kicking off its plating, hands finding purchase on seams. She reached the top, yanked a grenade from her belt, and wedged it into a vent. When the explosion tore through the machine's torso, she was already mid-air, rolling on the landing, and snapping a plasma rifle from the wreckage. The drones hesitated for a fraction of a second, long enough. She swept the rifle in a tight arc, burning through their ranks until the range floor was littered with smoking parts. Over the comm, Drvac's voice was tight. "Extraction team, deploy immediately." Riley keyed her mic. "Nah, I'm good. I'll bring a souvenir." Minutes later, the dropship hatch closed behind her. The Vark construct's head sat beside her on the bench, wires dangling, faint smoke curling from its exposed circuits. She leaned back, tugging off her helmet and shaking out her hair. Strip stared at the trophy, then at her. That was not supposed to happen. She grinned, stretching her legs. "Nothing ever is." The dropship lifted off, engines roaring, leaving the shattered range behind. Somewhere in the control deck, Drvac was already shouting into comm channels, demanding answers. Riley leaned her head back, closing her eyes. The fight had been fun, and the way things were going, she had the feeling the galaxy was just getting warmed up. The footage hit the galactic network less than 6 hours after the test ended. No one would admit to leaking it. Half the crew swore they hadn't touched the upload nodes, while the other half pretended not to know what a share icon was, but the results were immediate. In every corner of Coalition space, holoscreens lit up with Riley Kane dismantling combat drones like they were malfunctioning vending machines, dodging plasma fire with casual disinterest, and scaling the Vark war construct as if it were a playground slide. The kill shot the mid-air roll, and the victorious walk back to the dropship with the construct's head under her arm became the kind of loop clip that didn't need subtitles. By the second day, it had been set to music. Entire alien cultures discovered Eye of the Tiger at the same time, and the galaxy collectively decided it was now the official human entrance theme. Other remixes followed: Danger Zone, Bad to the Bone, even an ancient Terran jingle about snack cakes that confused everyone except Riley, who laughed so hard she nearly fell out of her chair when she heard it. Dr. Vac was not laughing. "This has destabilized interspecies perception metrics," he snapped during the emergency briefing. His mandibles clicked like teeth grinding. "We are receiving diplomatic queries from 14 governments demanding to know if all humans possess this capacity." Riley lounged in her chair at the far end of the table, tossing a stress ball in the air. "Tell them yes. Makes poker night more interesting." Strip sat beside her, trying not to fidget. He'd stopped correcting her sarcasm after realizing she wasn't joking half the time. Now he simply observed her interactions like a zoologist watching an unpredictable predator, equal parts fascinated and wary. Dr. Vac ignored her and gestured toward a cluster of screens, each displaying snippets of alien news feeds. In one, a reptilian anchor announced that humans were likely apex predators in bipedal disguise. In another, a bright-feathered reporter speculated that Earth's atmosphere must contain combat hormones, explaining their reflexes. One particularly excitable network aired a segment where their host attempted to recreate Riley's drone takedowns using a household appliance. "They are turning this into entertainment," Dr. Vac said bitterly. "Our military assessment has become a meme." Riley tilted her head. "Good. Means people are paying attention." "They are paying the wrong kind of attention," he said. "Already we have received recruitment offers. One came with a proposal to grant humanity an uninhabited moon in exchange for military service." She perked up. "Do I get to name the moon? Because I have ideas." Before Dr. Vac could retort, the comm unit on the table beeped. The projection that materialized above it showed a tall, broad-shouldered alien with crimson plating and eyes like molten gold. Even through the distortion of the connection, his disdain was palpable. "Coalition vessel," the alien said, voice deep enough to vibrate the walls. "I am Commander Scar of the Vark Dominion. The footage of your human defeating our construct is a humiliation to my people. We demand satisfaction." Dr. Vac's tone shifted to something measured and diplomatic. The incident was unplanned. The unit's destruction occurred during a contained exercise, not in formal combat. "We will accept nothing less than a duel," Scar interrupted. "Single combat. Your human against our champion. On neutral ground, witnessed by the galaxy." The silence in the briefing room stretched. Riley caught Strip's sideways glance, equal parts incredulous and worried. She leaned forward, propping her chin on one hand. "When and where?" Dr. Vac's head snapped toward her. "You will not." "Sure I will," she said, shrugging. "Sounds like fun. Besides, you think they're going to challenge anyone else after watching that video? This is about pride. They'll keep pushing until someone answers." Scar's expression didn't change, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "We meet in 3 standard rotations. Bring your champion. We will bring ours. There will be no quarter." The feed cut abruptly. Dr. Vac exhaled sharply, the alien equivalent of a growl. "Do you understand the consequences of this? If you lose, humanity's reputation will be diminished. If you win, it could escalate into interstellar conflict." Riley tossed the stress ball one more time and caught it. "If I win, we can cross interstellar conflict off the bucket list and move on to interstellar vacation." Strip finally spoke, his voice careful. "Why accept so quickly? You do not know their champion's abilities." She grinned. "Doesn't matter. Low stakes are boring. High stakes keep you sharp." The rest of the meeting dissolved into logistics and protests, none of which she paid much attention to. She already had the shape of a plan forming, one that would make this duel less about brute force and more about sending a message. Later, in the quiet of the crew lounge, she found Strip still poring over data on the Vark. He looked up as she entered, his eyes reflecting the glow of the screen. They are stronger, heavier, and possess redundant organ systems. Their champions train from youth for this kind of combat. Good for them, Riley said, raiding the fridge for something resembling food. She emerged with a protein bar and dropped into the seat across from him. You are not concerned, he asked. She bit into the bar. I'm concerned they're going to make it too easy. Where's the fun in that? He shook his head slowly. I will never understand your species. That's probably for the best, she said with a smirk. 3 days. That was all the time she had. It wasn't much, but she didn't need much. She'd faced worse odds with less prep and fewer weapons. And this time, she wasn't just fighting for herself. Whether she liked it or not, the galaxy was watching. By the time she stood in the hangar the following rotation, running a diagnostic on her gear, the whispers had already reached her. Entire crews stopping mid-shift to watch her walk past. Aliens she'd never met offering her tokens, trinkets, and in one case, what might have been a lucky fong. Everyone wanted a piece of the spectacle. Riley ignored it all, focusing instead on the rhythm of her breathing and the weight of her weapons. Somewhere out there, a Vark champion was preparing to kill her. Somewhere else, millions, maybe billions, of eyes would be glued to the moment they met. That was fine. She'd give them something worth watching. The arena was a vast circle of black alloy, its surface polished to a mirror sheen that reflected the searing white of the overhead lights. Around it, tier upon tier of alien spectators filled the Colosseum, their colors and shapes blending into a restless, murmuring ocean. Flags of the Vark Dominion hung from the upper levels, their crimson symbols stark against the darkness, and opposite them the pale blue banners of the Coalition fluttered in the artificial breeze. The air buzzed with the weight of expectation, a mix of excitement and bloodlust. Riley stood at the center, helmet under her arm, shoulders loose and easy. She had chosen not to wear the heavy-plated armor the Coalition had offered. Instead, she was in light combat gear, reinforced boots, a flexible vest, and a belt loaded with gear that, to the untrained eye, seemed mismatched. Her dark hair was pulled into a low braid, and she tapped one foot like someone waiting for a bus that was already late. Across the arena, the Vark champion emerged from a shadowed gate. He was a towering wall of muscle and armored plating, each step echoing through the arena. His weapons, twin plasma-edged warblades, glowed with a heat shimmer that distorted the air around them. His black eyes locked onto her, cold and unblinking. The crowd roared his name, a deep chant that made the metal beneath her boots tremble. Strip stood at the edge of the combat zone, his hands clenched around the railing. His pearl-toned skin reflected the glare of the lights, and he looked like someone about to watch a loved one step into a hurricane. Dr. Vac was beside him, arms folded, expression unreadable, but his mandibles twitching with restrained tension. The announcer's voice rolled over the Colosseum in multiple languages, declaring the rules: single combat to incapacitation or death. No interference. No quarter. The duel would be broadcast live across the galactic network. The horn sounded. The champion moved first, covering the distance between them in 3 massive strides. The war blades came down in a crosscut meant to end the fight in a heartbeat. Riley wasn't there. She had dropped low, rolling under the swing, her movement fluid enough to draw gasps from the stands. Coming up behind him, she flicked a compact device from her belt, a palm-sized emitter that latched onto the back of his armor with a sharp clack. He spun, slashing horizontally. She hopped backward just far enough for the blade to pass in front of her chest, the heat prickling her skin. Her hands moved without hesitation, assembling something from the pouch at her hip, even as she sidestepped his next strike. It wasn't until she snapped the last piece into place that the crowd realized what she was building. A short-barreled railgun, its parts clicking together like a puzzle she'd solved 1,000 times. The Vark charged again, war blades ablur. Riley fired, the rail slug sparking against his chest plate. He staggered but didn't fall, armor smoking where the shot had hit. He roared, dropping into a relentless flurry of strikes, each one forcing her to shift, duck, or twist just ahead of the blade. The emitter she'd planted on his back began to hum. Strip's eyes widened in understanding, an overload beacon. It was charging itself on the kinetic energy of his movements, feeding on every step, every swing. The more he attacked, the more unstable it became. Riley baited him, letting him graze her vest once, then twice, her movements calculated to keep him aggressive. When he lunged for a killing blow, she dove forward, sliding between his legs, and came up behind him once more. This time, she didn't fire the railgun. She triggered the beacon. A blinding arc of electricity erupted across his armor, crawling over every plate, every joint. The war blades fell from his hands as his limbs locked, his roar turning into a strangled cry. The smell of scorched alloy filled the arena. Riley stepped forward, catching one of the falling blades before it hit the ground. The crowd was silent now, holding its collective breath. She tapped the blade lightly against the side of his helmet. Yield. His breathing was ragged, but his voice, when it came, was clear enough for every mic in the Colosseum to catch. I yield. The arena erupted. Some cheered, others shouted in outrage, but all of them had seen the impossible, a human defeating one of the Dominion's greatest champions without killing him. The feeds would replay the moment endlessly, the image of her standing calm while he knelt burned into galactic memory. Strip exhaled so sharply he nearly doubled over. Drvac's mandibles clicked twice, but this time it sounded less like irritation and more like reluctant respect. Riley tossed the warblade aside and stepped back, letting the Dominion medics rush in. She walked to the edge of the arena, where Strip was waiting, leaning casually on the railing. "See," she said. "No need to panic." "You could have been killed," he replied, still pale. "Could have," she agreed, starting toward the exit. "But where's the story in that?" Behind them, the crowd was still roaring, the duel already becoming legend. Across the galaxy, governments and warlords alike would be recalculating their assessments of humanity, some with interest, others with fear. Riley didn't care about any of that right now. She wanted a shower, a meal, and maybe a week somewhere with sand and an ocean. As they reached the corridor leading away from the arena, Strip asked quietly, "If they challenge you again, will you accept?" She didn't even slow her pace. "Depends. Before or after happy hour?" Strip didn't answer, but when the sound of 80s synth music began to play from the arena's loudspeakers, he finally understood. She had won on her terms, and the galaxy would never forget it.